What would you think if I told you that in modern love, men aren't falling into passion, they're signing contracts they don't know how to read? He calls it love. She calls it connection. But underneath the soft declarations and curated intimacy lies something colder, something more calculated, a silent exchange of value. And most men, unaware of their inner terrain, walk blindly into this trade with nothing but their hunger for belonging. Carl Jung knew this hunger well. A man, disconnected from his own soul, projects it outward. He does not seek partnership, he seeks completion. He offers provision, performance, presence, but beneath it, what he truly craves is reflection. To be seen, to be mirrored, to feel, for one moment, like he matters beyond his utility. But in the world where love has been stripped to metrics, how much he earns, how much he gives, how many expectations he fulfills, the soul has no currency. The masculine becomes a provider first, a person second. And the love he longs for comes at the cost of his freedom. This is not spoken aloud, of course. It is implied. If he leads, provides, protects, then maybe he will be loved. But only as long as the exchange remains profitable. This is the unspoken contract. And it's why so many men feel alone in the arms of someone who once adored them. Because it was never their essence that was valued, it was their function. The doing. The fixing. The fulfilling of roles. But who sees the boy beneath the armor? The poet behind the paycheck? Who touches the man not for what he gives, but for who he is? He begins to feel it in fragments. The way affection cools when expectations aren't met. The subtle shift from romance to transaction. And suddenly, the warmth of love becomes a performance under pressure. He cannot name the emptiness, but it grows. And so he performs harder, gives more, sacrifices further. But love, when traded like a commodity, cannot be revived by effort, it must be reborn from truth. You may recognize this. You may be in it, chasing validation in a marketplace disguised as partnership, thinking your devotion will earn what should be freely given. But love that must be earned is not love, it is labor. And labor without reverence turns the man into a machine. He becomes efficient, dependable, predictable, but not alive. And isn't that the tragedy? That love, the most sacred of human connections, becomes a ledger of silent exchanges. He brings stability. She brings affection. He provides structure. She offers softness, so long as the terms remain favorable. But what happens when he falters? When his currency weakens? When his soul cries out for something more than performance? He is not loved for his presence, but for his function. And deep in the unconscious, the wound widens. Jung called it the fragmentation of the self, the loss of authentic identity beneath roles imposed by culture, fear, and unmet childhood needs. The man in love becomes the product. The masculine becomes commodified. And no one mourns it, because he appears to be thriving. But inside, he knows, this is not love. This is approval rented by compliance. She may not mean to do it. She may not see it. She, too, has been shaped by silent indoctrinations. To seek safety through dependence. To equate love with security. To believe that a man must earn her softness. But when she withholds love to extract obedience, she does not build a bond, she builds a contract. And the man, hungry to matter, signs it. He doesn't know he is signing away the parts of himself that once danced wild and unbound. The laughter. The uncertainty. The dreamer. He becomes a steady hand, a stoic provider, but not a soul she truly sees. In this transaction, something sacred dies. And when it does, both suffer. She feels unloved. He feels unseen. She resents his emotional absence. He resents her conditional affection. Yet both are responding to a system, not each other. A system that says, love is earned. Love is measured. Love is business. But the soul cannot live inside business. It demands risk, not reward. Vulnerability, not leverage. Depth, not dependence. And so the man begins to fracture. Not from failure, but from living a life where he is never truly met. where his depth is too inconvenient, where his grief is too heavy, where his truth is too raw to fit inside the walls of transaction. It is here he begins to wake. Not in rage, but in ache. Not to leave her, but to reclaim himself. Because the real question is no longer, does she love me? It becomes, do I even recognize who I've become? The man begins to see the quiet cost of the love he thought he wanted. Not in explosive betrayals, but in subtle erasures. The way he no longer speaks the truth of his hunger. The way he pauses before expressing his pain, calculating whether it will be received or resented. The way he folds his soul into smaller shapes to keep the peace, to keep the home, to keep her from drifting away. But keeping love should never require losing the self. Carl Jung warned of this dismembering of the psyche. When the inner masculine is not allowed to fully emerge, it becomes distorted. The man becomes a ghost of himself, haunted by what he once was and what he could have been. He gives more than he has, loves more than he has met, and calls it honor. But it's not honor, it's fear dressed as devotion. Fear that if he stops giving, she will stop loving. Fear that if he stands in his full, sovereign masculine, she will no longer approve. And so he trades authenticity for acceptance. But the soul is not so easily silenced. You can feel it, can't you? That subtle war between obligation and aliveness. The pull between staying what she needs and becoming what you are. You may still be in the relationship. You may still smile across the dinner table. But in your eyes something is dying. A spark. A fire. A truth that longs to rise. He remembers the man he was before he equated love with loss. Before he learned to measure his worth in what he could provide. He remembers laughter that didn't feel rehearsed. Touch that didn't feel transactional. He remembers himself, not the partner, not the provider, but the man. That memory becomes a calling. And once the soul begins to remember, it cannot go back to sleep. He begins to speak less to please, more to reveal. He stops apologizing for the space he takes up. He reclaims the parts of him she never understood, and stops making them smaller so she would feel safer. And if she cannot walk with him through that becoming, he does not beg. Because love that demands your silence isn't love, it's survival. He begins to choose truth over tolerance, depth over duty, and himself over the role he was taught to play. At first, it feels like betrayal. To her, to the relationship, to the dream they once held like a fragile candle in the dark. But it is not betrayal, it is emergence. The man is not destroying love. He is daring to ask if what they built was ever love at all, or merely a sanctuary of control stitched together by fear of being alone. He doesn't blame her. He sees her clearly now, perhaps for the first time. The girl who was also taught that love is earned, that value lies in what you can extract. She was told that security is worth more than presence, that a man should pay to stay. And so, she became a curator of conditions. Unconsciously. Lovingly. But a curator nonetheless. He no longer fits inside the exhibit. He is not angry. He is awake. Jung would call this the confrontation with the shadow. The moment when man sees that what he resented in her coldness, her demands, her withdrawal, was also in him. His compliance, his self-abandonment, his inability to speak what he truly needed. They were not enemies. They were mirrors, reflecting each other's unhealed selves. And now, the mirrors are cracking. Because truth, once spoken, shatters every illusion it touches. She may call it selfishness. She may accuse him of changing. And she would be right. He has changed. He is no longer willing to love with shackled hands. He is no longer willing to perform devotion while silencing his own soul. She will feel the shift. The presence no longer laced with fear. The gaze that sees through her, not to hurt, but to truly see. And in that gaze, she will either rise to meet him in consciousness, or retreat into the old familiar script, asking him to shrink once more. But this time, he will not. Because the man who reclaims himself is no longer for sale. He is no longer interested in emotional transactions disguised as romance. He is no longer willing to trade his peace for proximity. He has stopped begging for softness from a system that rewards silence and punishes depth. And in that choice, he becomes whole. Not because she stayed. Not because she finally understood. But because he finally stopped asking others to value what he refused to honor in himself. There is a silence that follows awakening, a holy silence. Not the silence of defeat, but the silence of clarity. The man does not raise his voice. He does not make demands. He simply stands in the gravity of his being, no longer bending to be chosen, no longer molding himself into a currency for love. He becomes sovereign. And in that sovereignty, something ancient and powerful stirs, not just in him, but in the feminine too. Because a man who no longer negotiates his soul for connection sends a ripple into every woman who once held his silence as proof of devotion. She feels it, his presence without performance. His love, no longer attached to obedience. His truth, no longer afraid of loss. It calls her to examine herself. To peer into the mirrors he once provided. Was her love ever love? Or was it a longing for control disguised as care? Did she adore him, or the safety he gave? Did she cherish his spirit, or his sacrifice? Now, there is no mask left between them. No deal. No ledger. Only the raw honesty of two people who have seen each other beyond illusion. If she is ready, she will walk through the fire with him. She will shed the persona of the needing, demanding, bargaining woman and rise as the divine feminine, whole, sovereign, radiant not because he gives to her, but because she has given herself back to herself. But if she is not ready, she will cling. She will protest. She will claim betrayal where there was only liberation. And he will not argue. Because the man who has faced his shadow does not fight to be understood. He walks in peace. And peace is the final wealth. Not love as possession, but love as presence. Not love as business, but love as being. No more deals. No more trades. No more keeping score. He knows now that to be chosen through self-abandonment is a wound, not a win. He will love again. But next time, he will not pay with his soul. And if she returns, not in fear, but in freedom, then the love that rises will not be transactional. It will be transcendent. A meeting of whole beings, not broken halves. And if she does not, he will still rise. Because the man who finds himself is never truly alone again. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.